to share, like, what's your list of things that you would love to do for 24 hours that you would just want to delight in? All right, we got it. What would be on my list? If I could describe my perfect ideal 24 hours where I can just only do things I delight in, it would start the evening before, ideally on a Thursday evening, watching the latest episode of Survivor, okay? Season 50 is coming up in the spring, all right? So we're getting excited. It'd start Thursday night. I'd stay up. I'd watch that episode of Survivor. And then I would get up in the morning, and I'd go on a 3-mile run, just a nice light jog that feels just good enough to give me some endorphins while I can listen to my Brandon Sanderson fantasy audiobook at the same time. Glorious. Then I'd get home, and I would make a huge breakfast, tons of eggs, sauteed onions and peppers, and bacon with some of my wife's sourdough bread. Chef's kiss, you know. And I guess a husband's kiss, too, would be good. So we do that, and then I would have a full 3 hour, ideal world, right? From 9 to noon, just 3 hours at a coffee shop where I can enjoy a 16-ounce decaf latte while I read some scripture and prayer journal and read out of my current fantasy novel that I'm working through, okay, from 9 to noon. Ideally in Sioux City so that I can, get Chipotle. After. You know it! You know me so well. I'd get Chipotle for lunch. Oh, delightful. And then I'd come back home, and our girls are still down for quiet time so I could take a nap. And then our girls are also in great moods, and then we'd watch a family movie together in the afternoons, and then we have fun time through supper, and then ideally from like 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. we have friends over for that supper. We're hanging out, it's a big potluck, we're just catching up, playing yard games, throwing down some canned jam, maybe even have a bonfire, and then I can conclude by going to bed early and sleeping in the next day. That sounds delightful, doesn't it? And I'm sure you all, if I give you even more time to really flesh out, if you could have a full 24 hours to only do things that give you life, that fill your cup, that you delight in, it almost sounds too good to be true. It's an ideal that we might dream of, but we know, the likelihood of us actually attaining a day like that, next to none. But what if I told you that's exactly what a weekly Sabbath day is supposed to do? And I'm not just talking this delightful day that you can have in some dream world. This is what's supposed to happen every week for 24 hours. So why does it seem so impossible? Well, let's flesh that out today. Okay, we're in week 3 of a 4-week series called Shabbat. Everybody say Shabbat. Oh, we're getting better every single week. I love it. Shabbat. It's the Hebrew word for Sabbath. Maybe you've heard the term Sabbath before. It's not used near as much today as it should be. But Sabbathing is the Hebrew term for stopping and resting. Okay? It's where we take a full 24-hour period every single week to stop, rest, delight, and worship. It is the antidote for our overworked, overhurried, hustle and bustle life that we are all so drained of. And we're asking, how can we get our cup filled back up? How can we be better formed into Christ's likeness? Well, friends, I think practicing Sabbath is the antidote for so many of those things. It is the cure that we are so desperate for. So before we continue, I got to give credit where credit is due. This series is largely inspired by some of the content that John Mark Comer, who is a pastor and author and the founder of the organization called Practicing the Way. He puts this out there on this website. It's so good. If you're looking for amazing resources on how to follow the way of Jesus, he has some amazing 4-part teaching series over a variety of these practices. And so we're diving into the Sabbath practice. And so a lot of his content has inspired how we go about this sermon. So thank you, John Mark Comer. If you ever hear this, on our measly little YouTube channel, we appreciate you. But just to recap where we've started, there's 4 definitions of Sabbath. In week 1, we talked about what it means to Sabbath stop. That's literally what Shabbat means, right? It means to stop, to cease. But in the same breath, it also means to rest. And that's what we talked about last week, what it means to Sabbath rest. Because what we often do is instead of stopping and resting, we just stop and start another form of work. So the first 2 weeks of the series was all about what we shouldn't do on our Sabbath day. But today, we get to talk about one of my favorite topics, and is how to Sabbath delight. How to have a full 24 hours of the Sabbath day where you're not just stopping your work and trying to rest, but how to actually take delight in your favorite things and what all God has to say about that. So, for us just to kick off our conversation today, here's the truth. I don't know if you know this, but life kind of sucks sometimes. You know? And not just sometimes, like a lot of times. We're all too aware of how sucky life can be. I mean, as I just said, our mission is to form vibrant lives that withstand hardship. It's not one that is without it, because it is inevitable that you will go through sorrow and pain and struggle and trials, even if it's just that your kid won't sleep through the night, like, it just gouges your eyes out, right? Metaphorically, not literally. Please don't do that literally. We face so many trials every day. But that's why Jesus tells us in John 16:33 that here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows. Translation, life's gonna suck from time to time. But in the same breath, he says, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. Take heart. Jesus has you. Or how about in John 15:11 when he says, I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. So, yeah, we'll have many sorrows and trials, and Jesus has got us, but there is a way for us to experience his joy, for us to be filled with celebration. And here's the main point that I want to get at, okay? While sorrow is inevitable, joy is a choice. While sorrow is inevitable, joy is a choice. We are guaranteed sorrows. You're not guaranteed joy, because joy is a choice. In fact, you could call it a joyce. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. That's a great dad joke. Okay. Joy is a choice, because on one hand, joy is a feeling that we receive when all of our external circumstances are going the way we want it to, right? Just as sorrow comes upon us from an external circumstance, you might get the promotion at work. You might celebrate the birth of your newborn baby. You might get to celebrate your graduation coming up. We got a senior in the room. Calling you out, Henry. Celebrating that, right? Like, there's so many things that happen that give us joy. But on the same point, joy isn't just a noun for an emotion we feel. It is also an action we can take to rejoice, which means that joy is also a discipline. It is a verb we can take action on, okay? So what that means is that when all of life isn't going well, is not going the way we want it to, we can choose to act joyfully despite that. Even when it feels unnatural to do so. Even when all of your life is chaotic and buzzing around you, you can choose joy. So how does this relate to Sabbath? What's the grand connection here? I love what John Mark Comer says. Sabbath is a discipline of celebration and a delivery mechanism of joy. Oh, it's so good. Sabbath is a discipline of celebration and a delivery mechanism of joy. It is supposed to be a conveyor belt that brings life's delightfulness to you every week, regardless of what happened. It is a time where you can set this all aside and for you to practice these things that delight in you, no matter what. But it requires discipline, which is precisely why Sabbath is considered a spiritual discipline. This does not come naturally. This is hard for us to do, okay? So let's unpack this a little bit. How can we practice the discipline of Sabbath to where we can delight in it? So without further ado, let's finally get into our passage, Genesis chapter 1, verse 31 through Genesis chapter 2, verse 3. I'm reading from the New Living Translation, so if you have a Bible and you want to flip over there, you can. If you have a Bible app, you can turn over there while you can. This has kind of been our core passage on Sabbath we've been looking at over these last couple of weeks, so we're just going to dive deeper into it. And there's actually some key words in the Hebrew language that we completely lose sight on because, ancient languages don't quite translate perfectly over here to our modern English. So we're going to focus on 3 new vocab words from this passage that's going to tell us a little bit of how we can practice a discipline of joy in our Sabbath, okay? But let's read the passage just to get us all on the same page. Then God looked over all he had made, and he saw that it was very good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the sixth day. So the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from all his work of creation. So good. All right. Let's dive into our ancient Hebrew vocabulary lessons, okay? So the first one, we've already learned this Hebrew word. It's what? Shabbat. Gosh, great job, friends. This is so good. There won't be a pop quiz, but you should still learn this for the sake of your souls, okay? Shabbat just simply means to stop, to cease, and to rest. So when we see in, wherever it is, verse 2, so God rested, Shabbat, from all his work. It means in the same breath to stop and to rest. They go hand in hand, right? So that's kind of the foundational vocab word. We've already unpacked that over the last 2 weeks. But the first Hebrew word, this is the new Hebrew term from this passage I want to introduce to us, is tov. Say that back to me. Tov. Tov. Okay. Didn't want to do it the second time. That's fine. Tov. What does tov mean? It means good, beautiful, and pleasing to the senses. Okay, so this happens, or this shows up in Genesis 1:31 when God looks at his creation and says it was very good. It was very tov, is what he's saying. But listen, the Hebrew word for tov is so much richer than just calling something good or very good. You know that feeling you get when you go to the Black Hills for the first time? Or when you look up at the Rocky Mountains for the first time? You know those feelings? Or that feeling you get when you look at your newborn baby for the first time? Or those feelings you get when you look at your bride for the first time on your wedding day? Those feelings you get when you bite into some Chipotle guacamole, right? It just makes you feel all the feels, you know what I'm saying? Where you just bask in how good and amazing this is. That's what tov is. That's what tov means, okay? Tov doesn't just mean good. It means to be enraptured by the beauty of something to the point where it just makes you feel all the feels and moves you to tears because you're just so elated by what you're seeing, by what you're experiencing. So this is the first part of what it means for us to delight in a weekly Sabbath practice, because the Sabbath just wasn't when God stopped his work of creation. It was also when he delighted in all that he saw, okay? So in the same way, our Sabbath day is supposed to be that delivery mechanism of joy in our world where we can shut down the chaos of our life just for a little bit, all the nonstop demands on our time, our energy, and attention, and to focus on the things that bring us tov, those things that enrapture you in the beauty of God's creation. You know, whether that's pizza, you know, whether that's movies, whether that's nature, you name it. You can fill that day with these things, right? Bike rides, a cup of coffee, naps. Listen, Sabbath is a literal mandate from God for you to treat yourself once a week. Not necessarily in the full, Parks and Recreation reference to treating yourself. Don't go all consumeristic and spend money that you don't have, right? Tom Haverford, not the best example to live off of, but you should still try to practice this. That's the first Hebrew word. It's tov, okay? The second Hebrew word that I want to highlight for us in this passage is barak. Everybody say barak. Barak, yeah. Nice and throaty. I heard some, that's good Hebrew over there. So barak comes from chapter 2, verse 3, when it says that God blessed the seventh day. So barak means to bless, but it also means to make happy, okay? You know that feeling you get when you've just finished mowing the lawn? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Ethan's like, oh yeah, hallelujah, amen. It's a great feeling, isn't it? Or that feeling you get when you complete that house project that's just been weighing on you forever and it's finally done. Or the spreadsheet for work is finally put together. I see you, Eric. And you finally have that working out exactly how you want it to. Whenever you finish some good project where you can just sit back and say, That's a good job well done. That's a little bit of the feeling that God had when it says that he rested and he blessed the Sabbath day, because it was a day when he looked back at his creation and marveled at how good that was, right? Deeming it a day that is then to be observed by the rest of his creation to bless it and for it to be made happy, right? So this is generally a good practice for anything we complete, but we don't do it because we're so hustle bustle that we never think about actually rewarding ourselves when we do something hard, right? To have a treat day when you have a great streak of workouts, for you to celebrate when you do graduate or when you do move on from some special project. It's just good to celebrate in that way. And that's a little bit of what God's doing here with the Sabbath. My goodness, a few weeks ago, I mentioned how I really wrote the series coming out of a 3-week vacation I took back in May. And that 3-week vacation was because I was so depleted after probably the hardest stretch of work I had in all of my career of ministry. 5 months of just so much going on. So in part, that 3-week vacation was for me to stop and to rest, to get my energy back. But it was also so I could delight in some of my favorite things. We went out to Indiana to be with my family again, for the kids to have some grandparent time so we can just sit back and take so many naps, being able to catch up with some of my friends from back home in Indiana. I had Chipotle at least 3 times, guys. My goodness, I need to start making royalties from these people. I've mentioned them 3 times already. That's a new record, I think, for a sermon. Dang. Hear me, Chipotle gods, somewhere out there. Maybe not. Anyway, I filled this with time that filled my soul up too. I wasn't just resting. It was things that I delighted in to celebrate coming out of this really, really hard stretch of work. Again, this is what our weekly Sabbath is supposed to do, to look at everything you did from the past 6 days, whether you hit everything on your task list or not, because even if you didn't clear your task list, chances are other things came up that you had to address, unless, you're being lazy and procrastinating. That's another sermon for another day, okay? This can be that day where we can go out, we can still look at everything that happened, and we can still be blessed. We can still do the things that do make us happy. And this sounds just so self-helpy, doesn't it? God wants me to be happy, and he's given me a whole day to just treat myself. Is that even scriptural? Well, how's your alternative life doing without Sabbath right now? Does God approve of that? Grinding yourself into the ground every single week with no stopping? To not take some pride in your work and to have some delight in the things that come around? Your life and your soul will thank you for practicing this. I love what Dan Allender writes in his book about the Sabbath. He says this, that the Sabbath is an invitation to enter delight. The Sabbath, when experienced as God intended, is the best day of our lives. Without question or thought, it is the best day of the week. It is the day we anticipate on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and the day we remember on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Sabbath is the holy time where we feast, play, dance, have sex with your spouse, sing, pray, laugh, tell stories, read, paint, walk, and watch creation in its fullness. Few people are willing to enter the Sabbath and sanctify it, to make it holy, because a full day of delight and joy is more than most people can bear in a lifetime, let alone a week. And let me just give an example of what this looks like, because I think when we envision what 24 hours of just delightful activities looks like, we almost can overpack that day with all of our favorite things. We want to go to Disney World and Disneyland all in one day or something, and just seems over the top. That's overdoing it. Just for yesterday, Casey and I took a Sabbath day with our family, and it started with the girls miraculously letting us sleep in till 8 a.m. I don't know how that happened. That was marvelous. So we got to sleep in for a little bit, and then I went on an 8-mile run because I'm training for a half marathon. For some of you, that does not sound like rest, right? And for some of us, a Sabbath day means you need to take a recovery day from your workouts. But for me, this is the day when I can do my long run, as I'm training for a half marathon right now, and it's able to pump my body with endorphins. It gets me to feel really good. I delight in myself after that. But then I'm also completely shot afterwards. So I'm way more likely to actually rest throughout the rest of the day. So we had our breakfast burritos for a big lunch, which was awesome. It's always good to feast on your Sabbath day. Eat good food, enjoy it. And then during quiet times, took an hour-long nap. It was great. And then we watched the third How to Train Your Dragon movie as a family. That was awesome. I tried to snooze a little bit more. That didn't work that time. But we enjoyed that, went on a little walk, and then put kids down for bed and practiced my sermon for today and called it a night. And it was so rejuvenating. And it was so simple. And yet for so many of us, it's so hard because it requires a lot of discipline to keep the Sabbath day distinct from the rest of the days and to try to keep all the other work from infiltrating that day. And that's what moves us on to this last Hebrew word that I want to highlight for how we can practice Sabbath delight, okay? Again, let's look at chapter 2, verse 3, when it says that God blessed, or barak, the seventh day, and declared it holy. Holy, okay? That's coming from the Hebrew word kadash. Everyone say kadash. We're getting so good. That's great. Kadash. It means holy, sanctified, or set apart, okay? Now, the word holy is a loaded word. We have no problem with calling God holy, but when we think of describing anything else as holy or even a person as holy, it kind of makes us feel a little icky inside. Because we just assume it's somebody who has this holier than thou disposition over everyone else, viewing them as morally inferior, right? But in its purest essence of this word, to be holy just means to be set apart from the rest or distinct. It's different from everything else around it, okay? So when you look at God, he is absolutely holy because he is so distinct from the rest of creation, right? This is how he's trying to describe the Sabbath day. It's distinct from the other 6 days. So let me illustrate this a little bit with my bookshelf, okay? Here's a picture of our bookshelf in our dining room. There's a lot going on there, obviously filled with some of our favorite books. There's some shelves that are more trinkets than books. You can also tell there the bottom shelf is all of our girls' books, so they can access them, and they're not going to get their sticky fingers on all our other books, right? That is our bookshelf, but there is one set of shelves that is set apart from the rest. You could call them holy, if you will. This is my sander shelf. What is a sander shelf? It's all my books written by Brandon Sanderson himself. Okay, Brandon Sanderson is my favorite author of all time. I even have a couple of versions of the same book. Yeah, I'm that guy, right? These are so special to me, and these narratives speak so dearly to my life that I have to keep, I'm not letting any other books get on these shelves. I'm not letting any other author infiltrate my sander shelf. In fact, I even have a map of Luthadel there from the Mistborn trilogy just to further distinguish it from the rest of my books. Yeah, it's bad. Okay, now listen, although in a way it's kind of mimicking holiness, it is not a shrine. I am not worshiping my favorite author, okay? But it is a way of me keeping these shelves distinct from the rest. How does this relate to Sabbath? Okay? For us to truly delight in this day, every single week, we have to keep it set apart from the rest. There should be things that we only do on our Sabbath day that the other days don't get. And there are other things that we do on the other days of the week that our Sabbath day should not get. We have to keep it holy, distinguished, set apart from the rest, and to fill it with all those things that give us life and delight. And listen, life happens. There's the family reunions that come up, the weddings you have to attend. It's going to rain again, and you have to mow the grass today. It's finally dry enough, for you to get it. That stuff obviously happens. But if at all possible, we can try to do this with our 24-hour Sabbath, I think our lives could change so much for the better. Okay, so as we wrap up, let's just get really practical here. What are some next steps that you can take in implementing your Sabbath day? So if you're looking for some practical tips, I have 6 of them. Let's dive into the first one. And the first one is just to slow down. I said this last week, if busyness is your drug, then rest will feel like stress. So if we're not actually taking every day to live a little bit slower, having a full day where we stop and delight in things that are not productive whatsoever, it's going to be very hard. So we need to learn how to live days 1 through 6 at a little bit slower of a pace as we enter into this 7th day to fully rest. Okay, so that's the first thing. We need to slow down. Second is to have boundaries around this day. So to keep the holiness of the Sabbath, we have to set boundaries. Listen, I don't know if you know this, but whatever you say yes to, you also say no to something else. So when you say yes to going out to your friends, for Brick House on Tuesday night for trivia, you're saying no to studying and working on other assignments to get ahead so that you can take your Saturday off for Sabbathing. You see? By saying yes to a third extracurricular activity for your kid, you're saying no to having that Friday evening carved out to actually kick off your Sabbath day. Make sure that whatever you say yes to is worth the less of yourself that you can devote to other things. Say yes to the things that are going to help keep your Sabbath day delightful. Say no to the things that fight against it. Okay? Number 3, you got to have a plan with this kind of stuff. So make an I will and an I will not list, okay? What are the things that you will do on your Sabbath, and what are the things that you will not do on your Sabbath? Because listen, you're way more likely to actually achieve your goals and habits if you write them down and you put them somewhere where you can always be reminded of what to do. So here's an example. You can say that I will, on the Sabbath, sleep in, write my prayer journal, have a big feast with friends, go on a bike ride, and eat my favorite dessert. And you are intentional to not eat your favorite dessert until your Sabbath day to make it that much better, right? Those are the things you will do. But then also have a list of what you will not do. Like you will not shop on the Sabbath day. Maybe you're going to say no to that. Maybe you're not going to do any housework to the best of your ability, right? Maybe you're not going to read the news or scroll social media, because that is certainly not delightful, let me tell you. Or maybe you're not going to check emails. Like, what are some of the specific things you're going to do and not do to make sure your Sabbath is delightful, okay? Number 4, I love this idea. It's the pleasure stack. What does that mean, the pleasure stack? So this is a term that psychologists use for when you save all of your favorite things that give you pleasure and joy for a single day or for a single stretch of time. So instead of sprinkling all your favorite things, hanging out with friends on a Tuesday night and maybe watching Survivor on a Thursday night and eating your dessert on a Wednesday night, what if you just jam-pack your Saturday and pleasure stack all the things that give you life on that day or on a Sunday? Because I wonder if all those things will become even more enjoyable when they're paired with all the other things that we enjoy. So maybe you have to do a couple other things throughout the week instead of the things that give you pleasure and delight. So that way your Sabbath day is really, 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 really great. All right, number 5, I love this idea. Plan a Sabbath feast. Plan a Sabbath feast. So this is an ancient Jewish tradition, but essentially what all it looked like was on the evening for a Sabbath. So they typically Sabbath Friday evening through Saturday evening. They would kick off the Sabbath by having all their closest friends and family together, and they would just pig out on so much food. They would celebrate with their friends, but then they'd share prayer requests and the highs and lows of your week and maybe even worship together and just do life together. And this isn't something that's programmed by the church. This isn't a small group that you run. This isn't some initiative that Resilient puts on. This is on your terms to invite people over to your turf to just delight in the beginning of this day. And this can be like some of your closest friends, maybe 3 or 4 people. Maybe this is up to 20 people every week. I don't know. You do you. This is something Casey and I want to try doing this coming fall, okay, for us to kick off our Sabbath with some of our favorite people. So lastly, if you want to go above and beyond, this is super hardcore, create a Sabbath box. Okay, so this is a box that you put in all of the things that are going to distract you and pull you away from Sabbathing. Maybe this is your wallet, just as that reminder that you're not going to use it to buy anything on the Sabbath. Maybe it's your car keys, so you're not going to go anywhere to run errands. You have to ride your bike everywhere. Maybe it's your laptop, your iPads, your phones, or whatever is going to pull you away, the things you want to stop, put them in the Sabbath box, put it up and away just for a certain set of time. Maybe it's not even the full 24 hours. Go for 8 and just see what happens. Right? Get a Sabbath box, and then you can put all that stuff away so you can truly, fully rest and delight. Cool beans? We're going to go ahead and move into worship and concluding our time together in our service. So I'm going to invite Pastor Mason back up here. And just to hit all this home, maybe this sounds way too good to be true. And honestly, maybe it sounds impossible for you. But listen, the Sabbath is only impossible to do if you make it so. God rested. You can too. And maybe it means being radical and saying no to the things that you've committed to. Maybe it means taking things off of your plate so that you can finally have the time set aside for your soul to be filled because your current pace of life is not working. Give this a shot. What do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? Just want to conclude with a passage from Isaiah chapter 58, verses 13 through 14, to really carry us home. When God tells us to keep the Sabbath day holy, don't pursue your own interests on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath and speak of it with delight as the Lord's holy day. Honor the Sabbath in everything you do on that day, and don't follow your own desires or talk idly. Then the Lord will be your delight. I will give you great honor and satisfy you with the inheritance I promised to your ancestors, Jacob. I, the Lord,